When it comes to defending America, it is not enough to merely have an American presence in space. We must have American dominance in space. So important. Very importantly, I'm hereby directing the Department of Defense and Pentagon to immediately begin the process necessary to establish a Space Force as the sixth branch of the armed forces. That's a big statement. We are going to have the Air Force and we are going to have the Space Force, separate but equal. It is going to be something so important. General Dunford, if you would carry that assignment out, I would be very greatly honored also. Where's General Dunford? General? Got it? Let's go get it, General.
And the U.S. Senate voted to give the military over $700 billion for the 2019 budget, making this the largest approved defense budget in modern American history.
صاحب السمو الملكي أيها الحفل الكريم، ها هي قوات العوب المعادية الجاثمة تحت رحمة المقلوبات المتفجرة وألوف من الشقائق
A new report says the U.S. Army is preparing for a new kind of war. The Army has a new $500 million mission to train and equip 26 brigades to fight in large-scale underground facilities beneath urban areas. According to the report by military.com, the Pentagon is planning for possible confrontations between countries like China, North Korea, and Russia. The $572 million price tag will go towards new training facilities and specialized training equipment. So for more on this, we're being joined now by former U.S. Army Brigadier General and author of the book Dark Winter, Mr. Tony Tata. Tony, thanks for being with us today. So, General, we're learning now that the DoD has approved over $500 million into this new program for training soldiers for subterranean warfare. Right. Military.com, who broke this story, says unnamed officials have mentioned it's because of North Korea and Russia because they have a vast network of tunnels under major cities. How does this information translate to you, given your military background? Is this kind of any sort of ominous foreshadowing of what's to come?
Well, you certainly train Manila to the next war instead of the previous war. You want to be training for future combat, where you may end up skating to where the puck is going to be, as Wayne Gretzky would say, as opposed
Sure.
to where it currently is. And so what we have is there are 10,000 underground military facilities in the world. Half of those, about 4,800, are in North Korea alone. And so as we've been ramping up for combat in North Korea, given the escalation of tensions over the last 2 years, 18 months to 2 years, we've been training underground in subterranean environments because it's a very different environment.
Several hundred Marines recently took part in winter weather training exercises in Norway. Now, the Russian embassy in Oslo is protesting them rather, and has warned Norway that this could be seen as an act of aggression. Russia's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova has said the exercises may be even considered an attack on Russia. Norway has recently boosted the number of Marines in the country from 330 to 700. The move, however, violates Norway's 1949 agreement with NATO
not to station any foreign troops in the country on a permanent basis. And for more on this, we go to former Pentagon official Michael Maloof. Thank you so much for joining us, Michael.
Of course.
And so from your experience, do you see this as an attack on Russia, or do you see it as a sign of aggression possibly? Is it going in that direction?
It's clearly a provocation. I wouldn't go so far as to call it aggression per se, but it is provoking Russia. And also, it's not just Norway. It's the other Baltic countries that also have had recent exercises and ongoing exercises. It's clearly a sign that the United States, in particular, is trying to contain Russia and show that it's not going to be putting up with Russian activities, let's say in the Ukraine or elsewhere. However, it is provoking, and it is also something that, particularly from that area, that region, there's a history from World War II with Russia of any attack or anything of this sort, and it's inflaming. And it's, as I said, it's a provocation, and it's uncalled for. It's part of the new defense strategy, if you will, to outline that Russia, China, Iran are all adversaries now, and so their strategic policy is going to be oriented more in that direction. And the United States, once again, is behind all of this, and it's just as it was in overthrowing the legitimate government of Ukraine a few years ago, and I think it's just a sign of the times that we basically are in another Cold War II at this point.
So you think that this is not just the Baltic countries? You think that the United States is behind all of this?
Oh yeah, sure. We're putting troops in. We had some Marines. Yeah, 300 to 700 is inconsequential considering that Russia could mass 50,000 troops in no time at all along the border. But what's the point? Why is that happening? Russia is not threatening anybody. The Crimea was annexed at the request of the citizens down there, and the Ukraine was overthrown by proxies from the United States and Western Europe in order to stop Ukraine from going more toward the Eurasia Economic Union, and that is always swept under the rug by the West.
And do you see Russia maybe fighting back because of this, or do you think this opens the door for some dialogue?
I think, given President Putin's outlook on this, he's not going to do anything that's going to try and heighten tensions along the border, because there's enough going on right now. Trump is basically shooting himself in the foot in other areas, and but I think it's something that they're watching very carefully. It would be like Russia putting troops in Mexico. You know, or and setting up new bases in Cuba, for example. All of that from the U.S. standpoint would be a provocation, and what would be the point? But that's not happening. However, you can't rule anything out. The Chinese are bringing in more ships, and even Iran is now thinking of bringing in more ships, because U.S. has insisted upon being present in the Middle East, being right up against their borders in many cases, and when we really have no legitimate reason to be there.
Well, thank you so much for your insight, Michael Maloof. We
Sure.
really appreciate it.